Good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Wednesday, November 9th, and we are beginning at 6:01 p.m. At this time, I'd like to confirm the agenda. Are there any emergent items from any of the councilors concerning the agenda tonight? Seeing and hearing none, are there any from administration or lead services?
No, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So now we're looking for a motion to confirm the agenda as presented. Councillor Wegener.
I move that council adopt the November 9th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented.
Thank you for that motion, and I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. We have no delegations tonight, so that brings us to confirmation of minutes. 4.1, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for October 12th, 2022. Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move that Council adopt the October 12th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you for that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. 4.2, Special Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for October 26th, 2022. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move that Council adopt the October 26th, 2022 Special Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you for that. All in favor? And that motion is also carried. That brings us to item 5.1, business, municipal development plan education session. And Megan, are you starting us off on this?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, if I could just say a few words before Megan,
Thank
Senior
you.
Planner, gets into it, and Dallin Osachuk will also be presenting. So what we want to do tonight, Council, is essentially level up Council's understanding of an MDP, what it is, what it can do. Planning staff's been working on our new MDP for a little while now. Of course, COVID has made it a little bit challenging in terms of ongoing engagement, but we are picking up some momentum in terms of internal engagement now, and we want to get to a place where we can bring a document back to you in the new year for some more workshopping and ultimately adoption in early in Q1 or early in Q2 next year. So like I said, Megan's going to introduce the presentation and go through some slides. Mr. Osachuk will also do that as well. But we're just hoping to kind of increase Council's understanding. I know some of you have been involved in this in the past, while some of you are, of course, new councilors that weren't involved. So we want to kind of just level up that understanding so we can move forward in the new year and get this document adopted and set up for a good future for Strathmore. So with that, I'll let Megan take over and share her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm just sharing my screen now. I'm hoping everybody can see.
Yes, we can.
Beautiful. All right. So good afternoon, or good evening rather, Your Worship and Council. I'm Megan, Planner 3 for the town of Strathmore. I do have Dallin with me here as well. We've been working on the MDP in earnest over the last year. And before we jumped into policy and goal discussions with Council, we wanted to hold this intro to MDP session that Jamie explained with Council today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over what an MDP is, its importance, explain what a goal and policy are. We'll give a brief outline of each of the proposed sections before we tell you what next steps are. And then if you have any questions at all throughout, feel free to just ask. We won't delve into specific policies or goals just yet. We're planning to set time aside in the new year with yourselves to review those proposed changes. So what is a municipal development plan? It answers the questions of where are we going and how are we going to get there. It's going to identify the long-term vision for our municipality and set out goals, guidelines, and policies in order to guide the growth that we receive that happens in town towards that vision. So Strathmore is projected to grow by about 9,500 people over the next 25 years. In order to accommodate this growth in town in a sustainable manner, the MDP is going to identify key areas for new development to occur and set out guidelines for protecting the rural and urban character, economic opportunities, and community diversity that makes Strathmore such a great place to live, work, and play. The MDP sets the vision for how to accommodate responsible growth It's going to serve as a decision-making tool for council and administration primarily, planning and development. It's going to help residents, business owners, and developers understand how growth will be guided and controlled in town. And it's also going to ensure that the growth that we do receive meets the needs of our community. It's not going to dictate our day-to-day activities. It's not an operational document. And as much as we wish it would, it's not going to solve all of our problems, but it will be the roadway in order to achieve our goals, in order to solve those problems. So I'm sure everybody remembers this beautiful planning hierarchy plan here. So the MDP is a document that is underneath the town of Strathmore, underneath our area of jurisdiction. It is informed by the Municipal Government Act and South Saskatchewan Regional Plan. The Municipal Development Plan is basically at the top of our hierarchy here. It informs our area structure plans, which in turn informs our land use bylaw, subdivision, our redesignations, and then of course our day-to-day stuff, such as our development permits, safety codes, our development agreements. So what does this mean? Oops. What does this mean for us? So the MDP has town-wide influence. We've been meeting with all of our departments now, and now with council, in order to educate and garner feedback for the MDP for the review. We're hoping this results in a more comprehensive MDP that's more likely to be used by everybody. We've been holding focus group meetings to discuss sections relevant to each department. We've been reviewing the proposed goals and policies together and discussing impacts of planning and development on each department. Planning will continue to hold these focus group planning will be holding focus group sessions with council once we've completed the final draft of the MDP. And we'll be looking at the document through the lens of council strategic plan to ensure that the MDP's goals and policies do promote the key activities within the strategic plan. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the MDP of the presentation, we'll go over what a goal and a policy is. So goals ask the question, where do we want to go? It's our desired outcome for the town for the growth. We use goals to provide a general direction of where we want the town to be in the future. Policies are the answer, how we're going to get there. They're actionable, they're rules put in place to implement those goals. So we did include a couple of examples of goals within the different sections. So for example, for environmental sustainability, a goal would be to create neighborhoods which are respectful and sensitive to the natural environment and which incorporate these features as part of the neighborhood. The policy in order to implement that would be area structure plans application shall incorporate natural amenities in the community as part of the parks and open space and ecological infrastructure systems. Another example for economic prosperity and employment, a goal would be to enable and support viable and sustainable development in the town. And then a policy in order to implement that would be the town should seek to avoid land use conflicts and incompatible uses in an industrial district. I won't review the last one. I'm sure you guys have had an opportunity to read them. So we've split our MDP into different sections with goals, guidelines, and policies within each one. So our MDP has the sections growth management, financial sustainability, roadways and streetscapes, parks, pathways and municipal reserve, infrastructure services, environmental sustainability, economic prosperity and employment, community recreational services, educational facilities and school sites, intermunicipal and regional planning, and finally, community design and residential development. I will give the presentation over to Dallin, and he is going to go over each of the sections for you guys.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening, Your Worship and Council. We'll start off here with growth management. So looking to outline when, where, and how our communities are built, with the primary goal being that the town will grow in a financially sustainable manner. Our environmental sustainability section be looking to, or aiming to protect and enhance the town's natural features like wetlands and trees, and promote environmental stewardship and resilience against climate change. And then financial sustainability will have just some more higher level financial policy, just concerning development, infrastructure, and the maintenance of town assets. Our economic prosperity employment section will look to guide economic development by attracting and retaining a range of employment opportunities, which is especially important considering the town's status as a regional hub. we serve a much larger population than just our residents. So something we have to be mindful of. Moving on into community design and residential development, looking to promote here healthy, safe, and livable neighborhoods and address sustainability in the overall development of the town. In neighborhood design specifically, looking at encouraging a wider range of housing types and increasing some density. And we'll also be looking at accessibility, which is both a physical and a social concept. For educational facilities and school sites, we will look to generally identify our future school municipalities must work alongside the school boards just to ensure that there is an adequate supply of land for any future schooling needs. Roadways and streetscapes and infrastructure services will go hand in hand, with the former looking to create and maintain a range of mobility options for all ages and abilities. We'll also look to support the transportation master plan, and we'll also address highway beautification efforts. And then infrastructure services will just generally support our stormwater, water, and sanitary master servicing studies, again, with that focus on more financially sustainable growth. Community and recreational services will identify the importance of our community and rec services and their associated programs and facilities, and will emphasize their role in building a safe and healthy community. And then for parks, pathways, and municipal reserve, we'll outline the importance of our trails and park systems, their role in promoting active and passive recreation opportunities, and we'll have some policies in there just for managing the municipal reserve lands that make these parks and pathways possible. And then our final section here, intermunicipal and regional planning. We'll seek to maintain a supportive relationship with our neighbors in Wheatland County and Siksika Nation. And we'll also look to create a urban-rural transition policy area, just with respect to development and on the municipal border with the county.
Thank you, Dallin. So what's next? So planning is going to be finishing the focus group meetings with the internal staff. We're going to be taking all of the feedback we've received so far and include it in the MDPs, changing up the goals and policies in a meaningful way. We'll then circulate the sections back to those focus groups and offer the opportunity for more group meetings to review the goals and policies together. The final draft of the MDP will be circulated to the public, stakeholders, and council. Planning will sit down with council to discuss the policies and goals in depth to ensure they still align or they align with council's strategic plan. This will provide an opportunity to discuss whether there are any gaps between the proposed MDP and council's overall growth goals for the community. How the stakeholder and public circulation will look will be confirmed in the new year. Likely the document will be made available for the public and stakeholder groups, and open houses will be hosted where they will have an opportunity to review the document, speak to staff, and provide comments. Once these steps have been completed, planning staff will bring the MDP back to council under a bylaw. The bylaw will rescind the current MDP and adopt the new one. So it'll be the usual bylaw reading process with first reading held over one council meeting, public hearing with proposed second and third reading on another. This does conclude the very quick education session on what an MDP is. There's myself, Dallin, and Jamie here to answer any questions that council may have about MDPs in general. For example, like if you're not sure how they're used in practice, or if you have questions about our MDP as it is, or any of the review stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, Megan, and Dallin. I have a quick. This is the question time, obviously. So I have a question. Do the school divisions stay in contact with us, Jamie, as far as their future needs, or is that something we initiate? Does it start with them?
Through the chair, it can go both ways. I would suggest that in Strathmore, we probably haven't had any residential ASPs recently, but maybe there'll be some more in the future. But typically that's the stage where you kind of would engage the school boards to let them know there's a new residential area coming, being applied for, and we want to ensure that there's enough school sites, obviously, for the populations being generated. Unless there's some change with the school boards where they would approach us and have a specific need. But I would suggest that we are in kind of regular communication with the school boards to ensure that that, their needs are being met with new plans.
Thank you. And then a question on parks and pathways. I know it gets into the subdivision stage as far as pathways, but in our MDP, you have that section on parks, pathways, and municipal reserve. It's 10% of the development size that is set for municipal reserve or for green space?
Through the chair, yeah. So 10%, and that does include school sites and reserves. So sometimes it's a challenge to get all the needs met in the green space in an area, but obviously that's why we engage with all the stakeholders early in the process.
Okay.
And you also spoke to pathways. So what an ASP typically does is outline the pathway network, and then an MDP could, if we wanted to, we could assign or establish the overall pedestrian network throughout the whole town that would kind of set aside where it should go in the future. That way we're kind of ready when those new plans come in.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anything in writing currently that locks in new developers to put in pathways right at the start of subdivision work? Because I know we've had to put in many of our own pathways into subdivisions that had very little in the way of pathways. So what do we have in place that ensures that if a new subdivision is going to be started sometime in 2023, that they will put in pathways that will connect to the town's master plan?
Through the chair, I'll let Megan answer that one, and I'll add if there's anything left to add.
Okay, thank you.
If I'm remembering, or through the chair, sorry, if I'm remembering correctly, it is in our current MDP that we do require new subdivisions provide pathways that are connecting to our existing pathways. I'm just looking super quick to see if I can find the policy for it.
And perhaps I could add through the chair while Megan's looking. One of the challenge often is timing of when those pathways and or parks come on stream versus the kind of entire phasing of a new development. And sometimes that's where we have to have conversations and sometimes tough discussions with developers to put those things maybe earlier than they would like, based on how the community is developing. But yeah, it's often a discussion in terms of phasing and which things get installed when.
Do you folks know if it's fairly recent that we have that in place? I guess I'm thinking of Lakewood Meadows. They're one of our newer subdivisions, and I've seen no pathways there. And they have a green space that has sat empty for 8 or 9 years with a few trees but no playground equipment, which is a concern to me, because are we going to have to put in pathways at a later date, or is there something for them to ensure that they'll do that?
Through the chair, without getting into too much detail, I think the area you're referring to is a piece of land owned by a developer who's had some struggles recently. We do take securities from developers when they enter into subdivision agreements that do allow us to kind of proceed with those pieces of infrastructure if the developer can't or won't. That being said, we do want to make sure we exhaust all opportunities for them to put it in first. But yeah, sometimes that is a challenge when there's a delay of this nature.
Okay, thank you. As long as we have something in place so that the town of Strathmore doesn't have to continually put in pathways on taxpayer funding. Last question I have, and then I'll go to council, is how does Strathmore ever get into a situation where they have a substantial park? I know there can be agreements set up between developers of adjacent subdivisions where that 10% reserve could actually be linked to create a much larger park. I see a lot of small parks throughout Strathmore, and some are linked, like our disc golf course, but we don't really have substantial sized parks. I'm thinking like Red Deer along their river. How do we try to have something like a substantial park created in the future? Thanks.
Through the chair, I'll start and maybe Megan can add to this one as well. In my experience, those significant parks sometimes need to be, the town or municipality may need to purchase lands from a developer to kind of get that size and scale. Because like you said, that 10% is often a challenge to kind of assemble enough to have a sub-regional or regional kind of size park. I guess the second piece of that though is the MDP can, if council wants to, or staff wants us to, we can move forward with putting some, minimum sizes on parks as well. Because I know in some municipalities you get developers who put kind of little pocket parks all over the place when, yes, there is a need for some tot lots in a community, but there's also a need for larger parks. So finding that balance we can put some guidelines in the MDP to achieve that as well, if that's council's will.
So then for the new counselors, and it'll help me too, because I'm still a little bit vague on this, would we bring forward a proposal or a concept as a council then, as far as staff to look at having that occur in an MDP?
Yeah, it might have to be, and maybe CAO Scoble can chip in if he's still there, if he's still along with us. But it's something where council could probably put some aspirational statements in an MDP, but it would probably be something that you'd have to kind of over time develop some funds, put away some, and earlier we were talking about reserves, put away some funds to kind of have enough resources to actually purchase those lands. So the MDP could just talk about what the town will do moving forward, because the MDP obviously provides direction to developers, but it also provides direction to the town itself and administration moving forward. So that's something we could look at.
And can the town direct, like let's say that two subdivision developers border each other, can we direct them to designate some of that green space so that the two borders meet and create a substantial park linking the two subdivisions?
Through the chair, yes. I mean, that's something we can do. I've often seen that done with school sites actually, where school sites get shared and then they can actually get a little bit larger and can accommodate sometimes two schools rather than one. So I've seen that done. So of course, if that can be done, then we can certainly do it with smaller green spaces as well.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing as practical as what you're talking about, but this council has spent a year together, and these new councilors have brought this whole, we've just sort of barely heard the beginnings of their ideas and their understandings of community building. And I really just want to think beyond that strategic plan into the municipal development plan. And I really appreciate the succinctness that Megan and Dallin brought to this presentation, because this is where I always think of, and Megan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I always think that a municipal development plan seamlessly integrates theory and practice. That's what it should do. That should be the ultimate test of a really good municipal development plan. And if it doesn't do that, then things go off the rails. And when I think about the history of this council, for the sake of our new councilors, in my terms, where we haven't done very well is in what I don't know who was, I guess it was somebody spoke about schools, where we missed the boat, where we didn't have good planning for future schools, and there hadn't been a lot of diligence around that, and it created havoc. Being prepared for what Walmart and the big box stores would do to the downtown, we couldn't stop development. We wouldn't want to stop that development, but we weren't prepared on the other side. So MDPs can go so far to doing that. And I've heard, especially these new councilors, talk about, building economic equity and looking at natural resources and social inclusion and even the discussions that this council and the previous council had around what happens in a disease state. What happens then in terms of your economic development and how it's practiced. And I think that if that theory and practice is seamlessly tied together, then we have a much better job of being successful. And one of the things that I really want to highlight about this current practice is that it's being done by people who are a part of our community. And many in my past on this council, we often had consultants from outside that were doing the work on the MDP. And there were big pieces that were not representative, or in my never to be humble opinion, they were never representative of our community. And I think that was really problematic. So to see people who are involved in our community, integral to it, have grown up here and are invested in our community, doing this work along with us, beside us, I think that's a really, really important component. And final rubber stamped piece of work, but a living, breathing document that our residents have a voice to. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how, especially our new counselors and the new things that they've brought to the table, how they'll integrate those into the practice of this plan. And I'm thankful for the work that you've done on it as well. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments or questions from councillors? Seeing and hearing none, thank you very much for your report and your presentation, all of you. And I look forward to the draft MDP when it comes to us, and then we can start to look a little more closely into it. I appreciate all your work and the lessons tonight.
Thanks, everyone.
Mr. Scoble, did you have any further comments?
No, not at this time.
So am I correct in understanding that this brings us to near the conclusion of this meeting?
Yes.
Be still, my beating heart. Okay, that brings us to 6, question and answer period. Are there any questions with hopefully answers from councillors? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we have no closed meeting tonight. So there's nothing left to do but to adjourn the meeting. So I will adjourn the meeting at 6:28 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night,